There was an experiment that no one signed up for, but everyone joined. It began quietly, without laboratories or scientists in white coats, no test tubes, no clipboards, just a glowing box in the center of every living room. It didn't ask for permission. It didn't need to, because it came disguised as comfort. You thought you were relaxing after work. You thought it was harmless. You thought it was your choice. But while you were watching, something was watching back. Not through cameras, through neurons, through the way your attention flickered, the way your emotions spiked, the way your silence lengthened. Television didn't study your eyes, it studied your mind. Every cut, every laugh track, every moment of suspense was a probe, testing how your brain responded to light, color, rhythm, sound. It learned faster than you realized, and once it knew how to keep you watching, it didn't stop there. It started to rewire you. You see, television was never designed to reflect reality. That's the illusion. Its true purpose was to construct a version of reality that you would voluntarily step into. A digital dream that felt more coherent, more dramatic, more comforting than the world outside. Governments called it progress. Corporations called it innovation. But philosophers like Schopenhauer would have called it something else entirely. A voluntary hypnosis. Mass anesthesia, dressed as entertainment. For decades, the experiment ran uninterrupted. Generation after generation staring into the same luminous rectangle, believing it was harmless, believing it was culture, believing it was freedom. But what if freedom was the first illusion it took from you? Because every time you turned it on, something subtle happened. Your brain waves slowed, your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for judgment and analysis, dimmed like a light fading in a storm. Your critical thinking dissolved into background noise, and that's when the programming began. You thought you were choosing what to watch, but the real choice was made long before you pressed the button. The networks already knew what would trigger you, calm you, divide you, distract you. They weren't producing shows, they were producing states of mind. The news, the sitcoms, the reality shows, each segment was part of the same invisible script. Train the population to think less and feel more, to react faster and question slower. A nation of spectators, lulled by laughter, tamed by rhythm. And here's the cruel irony. It worked so well that when someone tried to expose it, the viewers themselves became its defenders. They laughed at the critics. They mocked the paranoids. They said, it's just entertainment. They didn't realize that was the line written for them. Because the most efficient kind of control is the one you enjoy. The experiment succeeded not by force, but by affection. It didn't command you to obey. It taught you to love your cage. And as the glow of the screen filled the room, something ancient within you dimmed. The fire that once made humans seek truth, explore, question, resist, was replaced by the flicker of pixels pretending to be life. This was never just technology. It was the architecture of a new consciousness. And by the time we realized what it was doing, we were already inside it. To understand how television conquered the human mind, you need to understand what happens the moment you press on. It looks like nothing, just light, motion, color. But within seconds, your brain shifts into a different frequency. Alpha waves, the same rhythm produced in a light trance between waking and sleep. That's when the gate opens. Your critical mind, the guard at the door of your consciousness, steps aside. Your prefrontal cortex, the seat of judgment, analysis, and doubt, slows its fire. And into that open space, images walk in freely. No resistance, no filters, no questions. The screen doesn't have to persuade you, it just has to keep you relaxed. And once you're relaxed, you'll believe almost anything. You've probably heard people say, "I don't let TV influence me." That's exactly what every subject in a psychological experiment says. But neuroscience doesn't ask for your opinion. It measures your neurons, and your neurons tell a different story. Your body may sit in the room, but your attention, your most valuable resource, is somewhere else entirely. Captured, focused. Not by force, but by design. Producers and advertisers learned long ago that attention is not something you win. It's something you engineer. They discovered which rhythms keep your brain in the trance. Quick cuts, emotional music, predictable conflict. They learned how long to hold a camera on a face before your empathy spikes. how to end a scene so that your dopamine doesn't close the loop, forcing you to crave the next one, how to flood your nervous system with microdoses of tension and release until you confuse engagement with meaning. They call it programming for a reason, because it programs. While you think you're watching a story unfold, what's really unfolding is your brain's adaptation to passivity. Your neurons learn that comfort is better than effort, that receiving is easier than questioning, that reaction is safer than reflection. That's how the mind is opened, not with force but with fatigue, not by argument but by rhythm. Your brain, exhausted by complexity, learns to prefer simplicity. It learns to accept the world as it's presented, not as it truly is. And once that preference is set, you no longer need the screen in front of you. The programming continues inside you. You carry it everywhere, in your habits, your conversations, your desires. You speak its language without realizing you've learned it. The real victory of television wasn't the number of hours people watched. It was the moment they started to think in its patterns. Short attention, instant opinion, endless distraction. A mind opened by television doesn't close easily, because what entered through the screen didn't just entertain you, it rewired you. And every time you laughed, cried, or shouted at that glowing rectangle, you were unknowingly training your own nervous system to need what it was giving you. This is how the mind was opened, and why most people never learn how to close it again. Once your mind is open, it has to be filled with something, and that's where the architecture of conditioning begins. Television doesn't persuade you directly. It reshapes the world you perceive, until you can no longer tell the difference between what you see and what you believe. It doesn't argue. It repeats. And repetition, over time, becomes truth. Every show, every news segment, every commercial works as a brick in the same invisible structure. You think you're choosing between genres, drama, comedy, news, sports, but you're only choosing which corridor of the same maze you'll walk through tonight. The system of conditioning operates through three main mechanisms. First, the substitution of direct experience with mediated experience. You stop living and start watching lives being lived. Instead of feeling the world through your senses, you feel it through the lens of a camera. Instead of exploring, you observe. The excitement, the fear, the empathy, it's all simulated, yet your body reacts as if it were real. You begin to crave emotional experiences without consequences. And soon reality feels dull compared to fiction. Second, behavioral normalization. What you see repeatedly becomes what you accept. The more a behavior appears on screen, the less shocking it feels. The more it's wrapped in humor or glamour, the faster it becomes normal. Television doesn't ask for your approval, it earns your familiarity. And familiarity breeds acceptance. You start calling imitation choice. Third, the narrowing of the mental horizon. Television defines the borders of what's thinkable. Concepts that never appear on the screen simply vanish from collective awareness. If something isn't televised, it slowly stops existing in your mental world. Your imagination becomes fenced within the limits of programming. You begin to think only with the concepts provided to you, like a painter who forgets there are colors beyond the ones in the box. That's how a civilization is trained, not through censorship, but through saturation. Not by hiding information, but by flooding you with triviality until you can't tell which parts matter. Every time you see a tragedy framed between commercials, your empathy is followed by distraction. Your nervous system learns that discomfort must be interrupted, that every tension deserves a break. You're conditioned to skip the depth and chase the next stimulus. Television has perfected the art of mixing truth with illusion. It gives you enough reality to feel informed and enough fiction to keep you docile. Enough fear to make you anxious, and enough laughter to make you forget why you were afraid. You start to notice a pattern. The screen doesn't reflect your life. It replaces it. It tells you what's important, what's desirable, what's dangerous. It defines heroes and villains for you, so you don't have to define them yourself. And the most effective part of this architecture is that it makes you love your participation. You call it freedom of choice. But the choices were curated before you arrived. 1,000 shows, one message: don't think too long, don't feel too deeply, and never turn off the screen. Conditioning isn't always visible, Sometimes it's just the quiet voice inside you whispering, "Keep watching. Don't miss what happens next." That whisper isn't yours. It's the echo of a system that knows your mind better than you do. 6 months. That's all it takes for the transformation to begin. You still think you're watching television, but television is now watching you. It studies your rhythm, it predicts your reactions, and little by little it molds you, not into a thinker but into a consumer. Your attention span shortens, your emotional range narrows, your reflexes sharpen for stimuli, but your ability to sustain thought collapses. You can watch but not read, react but not reason, feel outrage but not purpose. That's when the functional idiot is born. He isn't stupid in the traditional sense. He can use technology, pay bills, follow instructions. He might even sound informed, but everything he knows was pre-digested for him. His opinions are echoes of a script written elsewhere. When questioned, he doesn't think, he recites. When challenged, he doesn't argue, he repeats. And when you point this out, he gets angry because you're not attacking his logic, you're threatening his identity. He defends his captors, calls his prison a comfort zone, and mocks those who try to escape it. You've seen this before. People who spend hours in front of screens, memorizing slogans, defending corporations as if they were tribes. They wear their opinions like uniforms, never realizing they were mass-produced. The functional idiot is the perfect citizen for a controlled society. He obeys without feeling oppressed. He consumes without feeling empty. He votes without understanding why nothing changes. He mistakes emotion for conviction, exposure for knowledge, distraction for rest. He is intelligent enough to perform tasks, but too conditioned to question the system that defines them. And here's the cruel brilliance. He believes he is free, because television gave him the illusion of choice. Channel A or Channel B, blue logo or red logo. Two sides of the same narrative. And whichever side he picks, the system wins, because he's still playing its game. Look closely and you'll see him everywhere. He scrolls endlessly through headlines without depth. He speaks in catchphrases. He lives in cycles of outrage and apathy. He needs constant noise because silence terrifies him. Silence means facing his own thoughts, and his thoughts no longer belong entirely to him. The functional idiot doesn't know he's been reprogrammed. That's what makes the design flawless. He's not a victim of censorship. He's the product of saturation. And saturation doesn't silence truth, it drowns it. Every time he turns on the screen, he strengthens the walls of his mental cage. Every time he mocks critical thought, he tightens the lock himself. The system no longer needs guards, the prisoners defend the prison. This is not an insult, it's a diagnosis. Because if you've been exposed to the same rhythms, the same stimuli, the same narratives, then part of you lives inside that cage too. The question isn't whether you've been affected. It's how much of your mind still belongs to you. Television's greatest weapon was never information. It was emotion. Because emotion bypasses logic. It doesn't ask for proof. It demands reaction. And once you react, you're already inside the narrative. You see, logic divides people. Emotion unites them under illusion, and illusion is easier to manage than truth. Every story on television follows the same emotional formula: a hero to root for, a villain to despise, a conflict to escape. You don't need to think, you just need to feel. Your brain, ancient and instinctive, evolved to respond to simple patterns of threat and reward. Television learned to play that system like an instrument, a surge of fear here, a burst of laughter there. That here just before the commercial break. You call it storytelling. They call it conditioning. Because what matters is not the story itself. It's the emotional architecture it builds inside you. You learn what to fear, what to desire, what to hate, what to admire. And after years of repetition, these patterns become your default emotional map of reality. When you watch violence every night, your nervous system learns that the world is dangerous, even if the data says otherwise. When you see certain groups always portrayed the same way, your subconscious learns prejudice without ever hearing the word. When entire subjects are never shown, they disappear not from television, but from your cognitive world. This is how reality is edited. Not through lies, but through omission. Not through force, but through focus. Television doesn't need to create facts, it creates frames. And within those frames, your emotional reactions become predictable. Predictable reactions mean predictable behavior, and predictable behavior means control. You think you're informed because you watch the news, but what you're really consuming is a sequence of emotional cues: anger, fear, relief, distraction. Each segment resets your nervous system to a baseline of controlled agitation, just enough to keep you alert, never enough to make you act. It's not information, it's emotional choreography. That's why propaganda doesn't sound like propaganda anymore. It feels like entertainment, it feels like belonging, it feels like truth. Because when millions of people share the same emotion at the same time, the emotion itself becomes evidence. You think, everyone feels this, so it must be real. That's the matrix of emotion, a self-reinforcing illusion where shared feelings replace shared facts. Bonhoeffer once said that stupidity is a greater enemy of the good than malice. He was right. You don't have to make people evil to control them. You just have to make them emotionally predictable. And what better tool than the glowing box that makes them laugh, cry, and love on command? The screen learned to control not your thoughts, but the chemistry beneath them. It didn't conquer your logic. It colonized your limbic system. That's why so many defend the illusion so passionately. They're not defending the message. They're defending the emotion it gave them, the feeling of comfort, belonging, certainty. To question the medium feels like losing a part of themselves, and perhaps that's the ultimate tragedy. Television didn't just program the mind, it reprogrammed the heart. Addiction doesn't always look like collapse. Sometimes it looks like routine, like comfort, like just one more episode. That's how television perfected control, not through fear, but through pleasure. Each image, each sound, each plot twist delivers a microscopic pulse of dopamine. Your brain lights up for a moment, and then, as the glow fades, it demands another spark. You tell yourself you're relaxing, but in truth, you're feeding a neurochemical cycle designed to keep you hungry. The shows are built like slot machines: constant stimulation, unpredictable reward, a cliffhanger, a laugh, a scandal, a revelation. Each one releases a drop of satisfaction, and each drop makes the next one feel necessary. That's how entertainment becomes sedation. It doesn't numb you with silence, it numbs you with noise. Your brain gets used to the endless buzz, the flickering lights, the quick emotional payoffs. Soon, stillness feels unbearable. Peace feels like withdrawal. You've been taught that boredom is a problem to be solved, not a space for thought. And so you fill every quiet moment with stimulation: a show, a video, a scroll, a feed, anything but silence, because silence exposes how empty you've become inside. The addicted mind is not lazy. It's restless. It needs the next hit of novelty, even when novelty adds nothing of value. That's why long texts feel heavy, why deep conversations seem exhausting, why reflection feels uncomfortable. Your brain, conditioned by television, now expects the world to move as fast as a montage. It wants meaning without patience, rewards without struggle, insight without silence. And the system gives you exactly that: endless fragments, tiny flashes of fake meaning, a constant stream of stimulation that prevents any real depth from forming. Because a distracted mind can be entertained forever, but it can never wake up. The consequences go beyond habit. When your brain expects constant reward, it rewires itself to reject effort. Tasks that require focus, reading, learning, creating, feel painfully slow. They don't flood you with dopamine, they demand presence, and presence is now the rarest human skill. The age of addicted minds is the age of lost attention. We don't suffer from lack of information, we suffer from lack of stillness. We've mistaken motion for progress and stimulation for life. We consume endlessly, but create nothing. We scroll through knowledge, but never integrate it. We feel full, yet we're starving. 50 years of programming have achieved what tyranny never could: a civilization that surrenders its consciousness willingly. No guards, no chains, no threats, just the soft hum of constant entertainment. And here's the paradox: the more stimulation we consume, the emptier we feel. Because meaning doesn't come from consumption, it comes from attention. and attention has been stolen. Television didn't just shape how we see the world, it rewired what we expect from it. Speed, pleasure, escape. The rhythm of addiction disguised as modern life. The age of addicted minds doesn't need prisons. It needs screens. Because when your thoughts are constantly occupied, your spirit never has time to rebel. The experiment was never hidden. It was broadcast in plain sight, hour after hour, day after day, decade after decade. And you watched it. Because everyone did. No one realized that the screen wasn't just showing the world. It was replacing it. You believed you were consuming content, but content was consuming you. It shaped the rhythm of your thoughts, the range of your emotions, the very texture of your silence. It didn't need to lie. It only needed to define what was visible, and you built your truth inside that frame. The result wasn't a generation of fools. It was a generation of fragmented minds, people who know everything in pieces, but understand nothing as a whole. The experiment succeeded because no one believed it was happening. You can't rebel against hypnosis if you mistake it for pleasure. You can't escape a prison if you've been taught to love the walls. But here's the paradox they never expected. Awareness breaks the spell. The moment you see the mechanism, it starts to lose its power. The instant you question the noise, silence begins to feel like freedom again. When you stop craving stimulation, you begin to crave meaning. Deprogramming doesn't require exile from technology. It requires consciousness within it. It means watching the watcher, observing your own reflexes, asking, why did this image trigger me? Why do I need this distraction right now? What am I avoiding when I reach for the screen? Each question is a key. Each pause is resistance. Each moment of genuine attention is rebellion. The goal was never to destroy intelligence, only to divide it, to make you forget that awareness is the one power they can't automate. So the way out isn't rage, it's remembrance. Remembering that silence is not emptiness, it's clarity. That boredom is not suffering, it's space for thought. That truth is not what entertains you, it's what unsettles you. You don't need to destroy the system. You only need to stop feeding it with your time, your outrage, your attention. Because attention is the currency of consciousness, and whoever controls it, controls the world. Look again at the luminous box. It's still there, waiting. But this time, you see it for what it is. Not an enemy, not a god, but a mirror. And a mirror only has power if you forget that you're the one looking. The experiment you never agreed to ends the moment you decide to wake up. The question isn't whether you've been programmed. The question is, what will you do with that knowledge now? Because every time a human being chooses awareness over distraction, the system loses another subject and gains a witness. So if this message resonated with you, don't let it fade into the noise. Share it. Reflect on it. And above all, stay awake. Until next time. If this message made you question the world you live in, subscribe and join us in the next journey through the unseen.